The night was heavy. The cries of children echoed through Egypt. Families woke to find their firstborn lifeless. It was the most unsettling moment in the land. Death had entered every Egyptian home. No house was spared. The silence of grief filled the streets. This was the final blow that broke Pharaoh's pride. This was the night that changed history. The story of the Exodus begins with pain. The Israelites had lived in Egypt 4 generations. At first, they were welcomed because of Joseph. But as years passed, a new Pharaoh rose who did not remember Joseph. He looked at the Israelites and saw them as a threat. They were growing in number. They were strong. Pharaoh feared they might join Egypt's enemies in war. So he enslaved them. The Israelites were forced into hard labor. They built cities, carried stones, and worked under the sun. Their backs bent under the weight of oppression. Their cries rose to heaven. They prayed for deliverance. They prayed for freedom, and God heard them. God raised a man named Moses. Moses was born during a time when Pharaoh ordered Hebrew baby boys to be killed. But his mother hid him in a basket and placed him on the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter found him and raised him in the palace. Moses grew up with Egyptian education, but never forgot his people. One day, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Moses killed the Egyptian and fled into the desert. Years later, while tending sheep, Moses saw a burning bush. The bush was on fire, but not consumed. God spoke to him from the flames. God told Moses to return to Egypt and demand freedom for his people. Moses was afraid. He felt unworthy, but God promised to be with him. Moses returned to Egypt with his brother Aaron. They stood before Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." Pharaoh laughed. He refused. He hardened his heart. So God sent plagues upon Egypt. The Nile turned to blood. Fish died. The river stank. Frogs covered the land. Gnats and flies swarmed everywhere. Livestock died. Boils broke out on people's skin. Hail destroyed crops. Locusts ate what was left. Darkness covered the land for 3 days. But Pharaoh still refused. Then came the final plague. God told the Israelites to prepare. Each family was to kill a lamb. They were to place its blood on their doorposts. That night, the angel of death would pass through Egypt. Every firstborn in Egypt would die, but the houses marked with blood would be spared. The Israelites obeyed. They ate the lamb with unleavened bread. They stayed inside as death swept through Egypt. The cries of Egyptians filled the night. Pharaoh's own son died. Finally, Pharaoh broke. He told Moses, "Take your people and leave." The Israelites left in haste. They carried what they could. They took gold and silver from the Egyptians. They marched out, hundreds of thousands strong. Men, women, children, and animals moved together. It was the beginning of freedom. But Pharaoh changed his mind again. He gathered his army. Chariots thundered across the desert. The Israelites reached the Red Sea. Behind them was Pharaoh's army. In front of them was the sea. They were trapped. Fear spread among them. They cried out to Moses. Moses lifted his staff. God sent a strong wind. The waters parted. Walls of water stood on both sides. The Israelites walked through on dry ground. Pharaoh's army followed. But as the Israelites reached the other side, the waters collapsed. The sea swallowed the chariots. The soldiers drowned. Pharaoh's pride was destroyed. The Israelites were free. On the other side, they sang a song of victory. Moses led them in praise. The people rejoiced. They had escaped Egypt's grip. They were no longer slaves. They were God's people, walking toward a promised land. The journey ahead was not easy. The desert was harsh, food was scarce, water was hard to find. The people complained, but God provided. He gave them manna from heaven. He gave them water from a rock. He guided them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The Exodus was more than an escape. It was the birth of a nation. It was proof that God keeps his promises. It was a reminder that no power on earth can stand against him. Egypt was the strongest empire of its time. But God showed that He is greater. The Israelites continued their journey. They faced enemies like the Amalekites. Joshua led the army, while Moses stood on a hill. As long as Moses raised his hands, Israel won. When his hands grew tired, Aaron and Hur held them up. Together they kept his hands steady. Israel defeated their enemies. God showed that victory comes through His power. Soon they reached Mount Sinai. The mountain shook with thunder. Lightning flashed, smoke covered the peak. The people trembled. God descended in fire. He called Moses up. There, God gave the 10 Commandments. He gave laws to guide His people. He gave instructions for worship. He gave them a covenant. But while Moses was on the mountain, the people grew restless. They built a golden calf. They bowed to it. They forgot the God who saved them. When Moses came down, he was furious. He broke the tablets of stone. He destroyed the calf. God's anger burned, yet He showed mercy. He renewed His covenant. He gave them new tablets. He promised to go with them. The people built the tabernacle. It was a tent of meeting. It was a place where God's presence dwelt. The cloud covered it by day. The fire filled it by night. God was with His people. The Exodus was not just about leaving Egypt. It was about learning to trust God. It was about becoming His nation. It was about walking with Him through the wilderness. The desert tested them. Sometimes they failed. Sometimes they doubted. But God remained faithful. He gave them leaders. He gave them laws. He gave them His presence. The story of the Exodus is a story of transformation. Slaves became free. A wandering people became a nation. A fearful crowd became witnesses of God's power. It reminds us that freedom is not the end. It is the beginning of a journey. It reminds us that God does not just deliver. He also teaches. He shapes. He prepares. The Israelites walked out of Egypt with chains broken. But they had to learn how to walk in freedom. They had to learn how to trust. They had to learn how to obey. And through it all, God was patient. He was powerful. He was present. The Exodus is more than history. It is a living message. It tells us that God hears. It tells us that God saves. It tells us that God walks with His people. From the cries in Egypt to the thunder on Sinai, the story is clear. God is faithful. God is mighty. God is near. The Israelites were no longer slaves. They were sons and daughters of God. They were chosen to carry His covenant. They were chosen to walk into a land flowing with milk and honey. The story ends with hope. The Exodus shows that God is faithful. He is powerful. He is merciful. He delivers His people. He leads them into freedom. And that is the story of the Exodus, escape from Egypt's grip. A story of pain, of power, of freedom, and of faith. A story that still speaks today. If God could hear the cries of slaves in Egypt, He can hear you now. If He could break chains that seemed unbreakable, He can break what holds you back. The Exodus reminds us that fear is not the end of the story. Waiting is not failure. The wilderness is not abandonment. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means moving forward even when the way is unclear. Just as Israel stepped into the sea before it fully opened, sometimes courage means trusting God before you see the path. You may feel trapped. You may feel tired. You may feel like freedom is far away. But the same God who parted the waters still walks with His people. Take the next step. Lift your eyes. Do not return to what once enslaved you. Freedom is ahead. God is near. And your journey is not over.